Welcome back to H-Lot Gaming. In this week's video, we're doing a review of the Fateless podcast that dropped this week. I believe within this video, there's a semi or sort of a leak for the main story. We'll take a look at the clip here, and then after that, I'll sort of go through the highlights of the video, what I think the important points were that could be impactful as far as the game development and play goes. So let's take a look here.
Hey, great insight, Capper. One thing I did want to make sure I get in there is, for a lot of our guests, we like to give them the opportunity to kind of shout out a hero or legend or myth that you personally would be like, you guys got to get them in the game because I'm gonna want to collect them. So do you have a favorite kind of mythological?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I actually was when this was first starting. I I was like, "Hey, Simon, this is my idea," and he was like, "Well, actually, that's our idea. We've got that or IP because this is before you had decided
It's
IP."
true. It's true.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, we've already got that. And I think Brad at one point I had mentioned that to you. By the way, this is your own employee. He was like, it's okay. Well, you guys are doing exactly what was okay to Brad a few years ago. So I just wanted to mention that you might want to
I
keep
need a
an eye on him.
screenshot of this. And what are you talking about?
Well, I did the one where I did the one where it was like you take the different mythos. Like I had a story behind it that the Titans were coming back, and that all the gods had to band together to stop the Titans, and then you find out that one of the gods betrayed them all and has been breaking.
Yeah,
the
but what
seals
is
on
the
Titans.
context? Like, were you pitching this to me or something?
Yeah, well, long time ago I was pitching it.
I don't even remember.
Like, yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were talking about IPs, actually, Madcapper messaged me and was like, "Look, I've actually got a really cool idea for this genre of game as well." And I was like, "Funny enough, that's exactly like my idea." I was like, "If we don't end up going with an IP, this is exactly the type of thing that I'd already been talking to Sham and Dan about." Not
So that's the weird part there. That is semi-related to stuff I've been saying. He says the Titans come back, and essentially they got to fight him, and they find out one of the gods betrayed them. So what I've said in a few other videos, and if you even look down here, what is this? A dragon in the lower left. A dragon in the lower right. Let's watch another clip real quick from another video a few months ago.
Anyone's mind blown? This is Zulong. Gino created Zulong. This is in-game, rendered in-game. It's not properly rigged yet. It's not properly animated, so I can't show you any of that stuff. But
So another dragon, or a known dragon, Zulong. Okay, and we know, however you say this, Dragoth, I think is how you say it. I forget. Is going to be in the game, and then a few weeks ago we had this treasure dragon for the Asgard layer right there. You can see at the bottom. And what did I say in some of my previous videos? My guess was Odin's brothers were trying to overtake Asgard using dragons. So based on what Capper said, where he talked to Hades a few years ago, I'm thinking now maybe Odin's actually the one who's betraying everyone. They don't know that yet, possibly, and he's using dragons to do it because we have 3 dragons that we know are going to be in the game. That's a lot of dragons for a game that isn't specifically centered around dragons as far as using them as abilities or characters, or they're not your main playable characters in some form or fashion. So to me, I think they just told us the main story, which is related to what I've been saying, that someone is trying to overthrow the gods using dragons. So that's the possible major leak that I think is going on. All right, I'm going to go over the highlights of the podcast here for you while I let the visuals play in the background. At about 7.5 minutes in, after they do the intros, they talk about the tutorial and how they want to make sure they cater to the people who already know how to play the game. It's not going to be super hand-holdy like other tutorials. They won't tell you so much that you won't make mistakes, because they think that's better than catering to the 5% of people who maybe have never played this type of genre. Get people into the game, get them playing quicker. About 20 minutes in, they talk about making sure you can always progress so you don't feel stuck, because you get points in these games where you're just beating your head against the wall. So I want to make sure they design it in a way you always have an incentive to log in because you're getting that little extra step every day that makes you stronger. They talked also about don't make new content too easy to finish right out the gate. Simon used an example of when he used to play WoW and how an expansion would come out and there'd be sort of a new tier of gear that is geared towards the new content. So they kind of have that mindset going into designing new content, and replayability of older content, like give people a reason to do that. And then that relates to what they talk about at 30 minutes, which are masteries. So basically you unlock a mastery, sort of a skill that can be applied to any hero by doing certain things on a stage. Their example was, say if it was like the clan boss, yeah, you can beat it, but maybe there's a mastery to do it under a certain amount of time with specific rarity of heroes. So that'll give you the incentive to possibly replay old things, because by doing that, you unlock a mastery and can make your champion stronger. And those masteries can be on any hero. I'm not sure I mentioned that, but that's the important part about masteries. They did mention something called Mayhem. They said it's related to masteries. I don't know if that's kind of like starring up masteries or what it is. They didn't really say. It was pretty vague on that. 34 minutes in, they asked Mad Capper what he wants to see, and he reiterated always a way to make progress, so you don't just log in every day and feel like it's a grind. Even if it's small and incremental, you want to be able to feel like you made some type of progression that day, and make sure there's more than one way to beat a stage or content. He used the example right now he's playing Watcher of Realms, and he said it's so specific. Like, I played it a little bit, so I can't really comment too closely on this, but he said certain things, there's 1, 2, or 3 champs really to beat stuff. And if you don't have that, you really can't do it in an efficient way. So he said, make sure you don't design a game where you do things like that. And Simon agreed. About 39 minutes in, they talked about sort of new content again and making sure that it's not essentially a repeat of old mechanics. They talked about Raid, how Cintranos isn't really that different than Dungeons. Yeah, you have like 2 bosses you face, but you've already seen those bosses. And they said also they want to design it in a way where once you get power creep in the game, you're not just going to be able to beat it by brute forcing. You still need those mechanics to beat that content, even though, maybe it came out a year ago. You can't just brute force it now with new, stronger champs or gear, etc. About 43 minutes in is where they talked about that possible main story leak that I talked about at the beginning. 45 minutes in, they talked about a new faction. They didn't say when. I assume long after the game comes out, but they said possibly based on Native Americans. Simon says at first he didn't think it was that in depth. Then he really looked into it and found out there's actually a lot there they can use. So he said there's a high likelihood it could be the 11th faction related to that. When they did want us to come up with our own faction, I just really didn't have time to do it. What I wanted to do was base mine on the Lost City of Atlantis. I feel like, there's a lot of stuff that's just made up because it is made up, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff they could use there for possibly an 11th or 12th faction someday. Those are the highlights. Thanks for watching. This has been HLock. Oh, and if you like what I'm doing here, think about liking and subscribing. Thanks. Bye.